For the engine block calculation examples, it's not a complicated or a complex math operation. It's just using a formula, kind of knowing what you're looking for and knowing how to, just put everything in the right place. So here is our formula that we're going to be using. Engine displacement is going to equal bore times 0.7854. That's pi divided by 4. Which is just a quick way of getting the area of a circle. So that's what we're doing with that decimal right there. So we'll put that in orange here. Then we've got the stroke. We'll do that in red, and then number of cylinders, that'll be in blue. So to perform this calculation, we're just going to want to go back to our original scenario and then find our bore values, our stroke, and our number of cylinders, plug them in, and then that will allow us to multiply them all together and get our engine displacement. So first, we have a bore of 3.629. You'll also see this formula written as bore squared. So that's why they have the same value times itself. It's just squaring itself is the same thing. But so in this example, it'll be 3.629 times 3.629 times 0.7854 times what our stroke, which is going to be 3.649. So times 3.649. And then finally times our number of cylinders, which since it's a V8, it means it is 8-cylinder engine. So we're just gonna go to our calculator, multiply all these values together, and I will see you on the other side of that. So in this case, the answer is gonna be expressed in terms of cubic inches. So our answer here is 301.9 inches cubed. Okay, so next we have an example where we're going to be shifting or comparing two engine block calculations to each other. Because if you look at this next example problem, what they're asking us to do ultimately is to we're going to be calculating the increase in engine displacement from stock size to rebuilt size. So that means that the first thing we've got to find is our stock size, and then after that we're going to compare it to our rebuilt size and see if there's any difference. And what they're telling us in the problem is that the difference is going to be in our bore values. So with our stock engine, the bore is going to be 3.78. But with the rebuild, the bore is going to be 0.030 inches greater. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to set up the same problem 2 times. We're going to set up the stock calculation, and then we're going to set up a separate calculation for the rebuild. So first, we remember that our formula is going to be bore times bore. So for this, it's going to be 3.78 times 3.78. Then we're going to multiply by our pi divided by 4, the same value. So that's times 0.7854. And then we're going to put in our stroke times 3.27. And then since it is a V8 engine, we are going to multiply it by 8 to do our calculation, or perform our calculation. So we're going to go ahead and just enter that all into our calculator. And once we calculate that all out, we find that the multiplied numbers come out to 293.6 inches cubed. Okay, But we're not done yet, because remember, we're asked to calculate the increase from stock size to rebuilt size. And so looking at the difference between what they say we have in our stock versus our rebuild, with the rebuild, the engine bore is 0.30 inches oversized. And so what that means is we're just going to add we're just going to add 0.030 to both of our bore values and come up with a new bore value. So in this case, it is going to equal 3.81 times 3.81. And then the rest is just going to be exactly the same as it was before. 0.7854. That's our pi divided by 4, which allows us to calculate the area of a circle, which is part of, the calculation that's being performed in this overall problem. 3.27 for our stroke, and then since it's a V8, we're going to multiply by 8, and in this case, that is all going to equal 298.2 inches cubed. So now that we're calculating the increase. So what we want to do is find the difference. And if y'all remember, difference always equals subtraction. So in this case, we're going to subtract the smaller number from the larger number. So we've got our rebuild value of 298.2, and then we're going to subtract our stock value of 293.6, and then that ends up leaving us with a difference of 4.6 cubic inches. So there we go. That is how we took our simpler calculation that we did in our first example and then used it to compare two similar engines in our second example. So always remember to read the directions and just pay really careful attention to exactly what you're being asked to do. Because if you were to stop at that first calculation, you would have gotten this problem wrong. So just want you guys to be aware, always read the context of your problem and just make sure you're doing the calculations you're asked to perform. So hopefully that's helpful, and I hope you'll be able to use this in the shop.